Hello, welcome back to Global Environmental Policy. Today we are diving into environmental philosophy. This is a foundational, lecture because it pushes us to think not only about policies and practices, but about the values, assumptions, and beliefs that underpin how societies interact with the environment. So, before we begin, a quick reminder that the reading assignment 2 is due on Monday, so make sure that you are informed by instructions and upload your reading assignment reflection by Monday. All right. So first of all, I'd like to reflect on a few guiding questions that we go through today's, material. Firstly, do you believe that nature has rights or is just a resource for human use, and why? We will try to address it. And the next question is, how do different philosophical traditions shape our understanding of human nature relationships, which is really important and also central to today's discussion. And finally, how does the concept of the land ethic, which was introduced by Aldo Leopold, redefine the moral community in environmental philosophy? Actually, the main point here is that how how our philosophies toward, environment can shape our policies. But what exactly is environmental philosophy? At its core, it examines the relationship between human and nature. And this includes big, sometimes unsettling questions like what is nature, or do non human beings, like animals, have value, or is value only human centered? Or what duties do we have to future generations in terms of intergenerational, you know, duties or, um, you know, actions? And environmental philosophy actually brings together ethics, metaphysics, and political ideologies. It doesn't stop at theory, and it has, real implications for how we design policy, how we, measure justice, equity, and how we live in the world. So this is the central point of environmental philosophy, which is, you know, essential to know before diving into any policy cycle, as we talked in our previous session, the policy cycle, stages, as you can recall, and also some other important, theories and foundational concepts that we should know. Uh, in this case, we have some key thinkers and philosophers that have shaped our, attitudes and perspectives toward environmental philosophy. One of them was Rachel Carson, that in her, outstanding book, Silent Spring, exposed dangers of pesticides and brought environmental issues actually to a wider audience and sparking a growing movement for environmental awareness and action. Another person was Aldo Leopold, who in his book in 1949, the San County Almanac, Leopold argued for a land ethic. Land ethic was a great concept that he raised actually in the final chapter of this book that extended moral considerations to the entire ecosystems, not just for humans. And this was a significant step toward, a philosophical understanding of our relationship with nature. Um, the way of thinking or the frame of mind that we as a human hadn't, experienced before. And both thinkers, both Rachel Kersen and Aldo Leopold, push us to reconsider our role, not as conquerors of the land, but as members and citizens of a broader ecological community. Uh, yeah, here you can see a great, statement from Rachel Carson that she says that the control of nature is a phrase conceived in arrogance, born of the Neanderthal age of biology and philosophy, when it was supposed that nature exists for the convenience of man. But what is the environmental ethics? What are the core approaches of ethics? As we talked, the value is central to environmental, philosophy and environmental policy. Actually, when we talk about environmental policy, we talk about different values that different, thoughts and different, perspectives and ideologies, uh, you know, take for analyzing and for analyzing the relationship between human and nature and framing it. So, environmental ethics is the discipline in philosophy that studies the moral relationships of human beings to and also the value and moral status of environment and its non-human actions. This is the definition for environmental ethics. And the main question of environmental ethics is that what is the moral status of nature? And to answer these questions, some different schools of thought have been shaped so far, which among them, actually, five of the most important, uh, school of thoughts include anthropocentrism, biocentrism, ecocentrism, deep ecology, and ecofeminism. In terms of anthropocentrism, it, you know, describes a human-centered in which nature has value, only has resource for humans, and human exploits nature for their benefits and take advantage of it just, for example, for themselves, not for the nature. And we see some key thinkers in classical economics. After this area, biocentrism emerged as a new area of thinking in which all life has intrinsic value. Humans are not superior to nature, which was really a great step toward environmentalism that today we know as environmentalism. And Albert Schweitzer and Paul Taylor were among the most influential thinkers in this, thought. And after that, we had ecocentrism which talks about a holistic approach in which ecosystems and earth systems have value, both of them are value. And as we talked, Aldo Leopold and James Lovelock were among the most influential, philosophers. And then Arne Naess introduced deep ecology, which is really important in today's discussion in environmentalism. And it says, or it includes about the radical shift to ecocentric worldview. And it calls for biospheric egalitarianism, which is actually very impactful school of thought. So my question is that which of these frameworks actually resonates with you most and why? Uh, so imagine that, for example, putting out natural fires, as you can see in picture, or removing some individual members of overpopulated species is necessary for the protection of the integrity of a certain ecosystem. My question is that will these actions be morally permissible or even required? Sometimes we ask themselves these kind of questions, or we can ask that is it morally acceptable for farmers, for example, in non-industrial countries, or to practice slash and burn, techniques to clear areas for agriculture? What are the, you know, dire consequences of this kind of activities? Or even you can consider a mining company which has performed open pit mining in some previously unspoiled area. Does the company have a moral obligation to restore, for example, the landform and surface ecology? And what is the value of a humanly restored environment compared with the originally natural environment? So just think about these questions and their answers. You must think about different patterns, different case studies, or different contexts that should be taken into account. Or even we say that many people link that it is morally wrong for human beings to pollute and destroy parts of the natural environment and to consume a huge proportion of the planet's natural resources. If that's wrong, it is simply because a sustainable environment is essential to human existence and well-being. Or we can say that is such behavior also wrong because the natural environment and its various contents have certain values in their own right, so that these values ought to be respected and protected in any case. These are among the questions investigated by environmental ethics. So the central point of environmental ethics is value. It is the value-based, you know, frame of mind. And some of them are specific questions faced by individuals, by, in different particular circumstances and cases, while others are more global questions faced by, groups and communities and NGOs and environmental organizations, and also some global environmental treaties that we will talk about them later on the course. Yet, others are more abstract questions concerning the value and moral standing of the natural environment and its non-human components. All right, but Environmentalism is not just about science, so it's also about ideology. The green ideology emerged as a rejection of endless growth and anthropocentrism. It emphasizes, as you can see in the table, after some school of thoughts and ideologies, roots of environmentalism, it emphasizes a kind of local democracy and localism. Solutions should be rooted in communities. So it is a back to communities and what is the role of communities and how important different communities are in shaping different policies and different ideologies, as well as philosophers, as well as different scholars. And also it focuses on ecological limits, recognizing that growth has boundaries, and it's been influenced by deep ecology, feminist thought, and indigenous knowledge systems. This reminds us that environmental philosophy is not abstract. It's deeply political and connected to power. So let's focus more on the concept of colonialism as a way of, you know, thinking to indigenous knowledge system. Colonialism, as you may have heard or may have read some articles about it, has played a significant role in exacerbating the climate crisis, both historically and in the present. And colonial practices, including land disposition, resource extraction, or forced labor, have led to environmental degradation in different parts of the world, in Africa, in South America, in other parts of the world, and intensified the vulnerability of affected communities to climate change. For example, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that we call it IPCC, and you will, you know, hear more about IPCC over the course, you know, approaches to the mid, uh, weeks of the course. You will have to heard about, for example, the IPCC has acknowledged that the historical and ongoing impacts of colonialism on climate change, recognizing that the legacies of colonialism continue to shape climate change and to, harm the climate system and the vulnerable people with certain systematic barriers and, you know, marginalized characteristics. So notice that acknowledging the link between colonialism and climate change is crucial for promoting climate justice. And this means recognizing the disproportionate impact of climate change on marginalized community and advocating for policies that address the historical injustices that have contributed to these vulnerabilities. And actually, this brings us to climate justice, which is one of the most important topics among climate scientists and climate social scientists and environmental social scientists, which is a framework that links climate change to issues of equity, human rights and historical responsibility. And when we talk about climate change, it could raise philosophical and ethical questions that go far beyond carbon emissions. And, for example, who is most affected or who caused it, who gets to decide the solutions, or how, or who benefits from these solutions. All of these kind of questions are centered around climate justice. And climate justice critiques purely market-based or utilitarian approaches and instead highlights, intergenerational justice, global inequality, and environmental racism. And here, actually, environmental philosophy becomes a struggle not just for sustainability, but for equity and justice. And the an important question here is that how do our philosophical beliefs about the environment, or mm, we call it environmental philosophy, influence what governments choose to regulate or ignore? So this is the linkage between the philosophy and policy, which is important. But on the other side, we know that environmental issues are politically challenging. But why, for example, uh, environmental issues are challenging from the political, perspective? And because our beliefs about the environment directly shape what governments choose to regulate or ignore. Environmental issues are challenging because they involve public goods like clean air that no one owns but everyone needs. And this could be challenging in terms of conflict interests and something like that. And also, they cross different boundaries, regardless of nations, regardless of continents, both national and generational. And also, they involve complexity and uncertainty, where science can't always give clear answers to some, complex questions. And also, once, for example, damaged, many systems face irreversibility, which is another kind of, uh, you know, complex issue that we face in different areas, in natural hazards, in biodiversity loss, in waste management, in all of these topics. And that's why environmental problems are not just scientific. And we learned from today's discussion that they are profoundly philosophical and political. This is what that I wanted to share with you, and I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. Thank you so much. I'm here to help you. Please do not hesitate and feel free to reach out to me for any questions, thoughts, or comments that you might have for the material, for assignment. I'm here to help you. You can just send me an email and we can also set an appointment, both virtually or in person. And I will be more than happy to help you, all of you. Thank you so much.